Racist man gives sweets to black kid, unaware his dad is the police chief. It was one of those warm southern afternoons where the sun draped everything in a soft gold, and the air smelled faintly of cut grass and barbecue. Children's laughter floated through the park like music. Sprinklers clicked in the distance. Families lounged on picnic blankets, chatting and sipping from cold drinks. Malik, just 9 years old, sat alone on a wooden bench near the pond, kicking his feet and tossing small stones into the water. His dad was nearby, under the shade of a tree, keeping a casual eye on him. Malik liked the independence. He felt older when he was given space to explore, even if only a few steps away. That's when a man appeared. He came from the sidewalk, limping slightly as he stepped off the curb. Older, maybe in his late 60s. His clothes hung loose, an old plaid shirt, tan slacks stained near the knees. His face was tight and sour, the kind of expression that seemed carved, not worn. Leonard, though Malik didn't know his name, walked with slow purpose and sat on the bench next to the boy. Malik shifted slightly, just enough to put a little more space between them. The man didn't say anything at first, just sat there, watching the ducks glide across the water. Then he leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You here all by yourself, kid?" Malik said nothing. His stomach tightened. Leonard smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He fumbled into his jacket pocket and pulled out 2 small candies wrapped in bright foil. He held them out in his hand, palm up, offering like it was a favor. "These are good ones. Hard to find these days." Malik didn't move. "Go on, take one." His voice was friendly, but something in the tone felt off. Too forced, too rehearsed. The boy looked down at the candy, then back at the man. His dad's voice echoed in his mind. "Always trust your gut." He shook his head, polite but firm. Leonard's smile twitched, and for a moment, his hand lingered mid-air before he set the candies on the bench between them. "Suit yourself." He stood slowly, glancing once over his shoulder before walking away. Malik stared at the candy, unmoving. Something wasn't right. Malik didn't touch the candy. He just looked at it, then looked toward the trees where his dad stood, pretending to scroll through his phone. The wrappers on the candy were colorful, but one of them looked crinkled in a strange way. Not like something fresh from a store. The park was still full of life. A little girl laughed as she chased bubbles near the playground. 2 joggers passed by, chatting quietly. Everything looked normal, but the space around the bench suddenly felt too quiet, like the rest of the world had stepped back. Malik reached down and picked up one of the candies. He didn't unwrap it. He only held it in his palm, watching the way the sunlight hit the foil. There was a tiny tear near the edge. Nothing obvious, but enough to notice. He turned it over in his hand. The label was faded. The glue on the seal was uneven. A cold feeling crept through his chest. Behind him, footsteps approached. Heavy, steady ones. His father's voice came low and even. "Put that down." Malik dropped the candy instantly and stepped away from the bench. Jamal bent down, pulling a tissue from his back pocket. He picked up the candy carefully, then the second one. He didn't speak right away. Just looked at both pieces in his hand, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Did that man give these to you?" Malik nodded. Jamal didn't raise his voice. He didn't panic. He just stood, gave a slow glance in the direction Leonard had walked, and then placed the candy in a zippered pocket on the side of his jacket. "You all right?" Malik nodded again. He was quiet, but his eyes stayed on his dad's face, watching every movement. "Good." They stood side by side for a moment, father and son, as if the world had paused around them. Leonard was gone from view, lost among the winding paths and clusters of trees. The bench was empty now, except for a small stain where the candy had rested. Jamal looked down at Malik, then placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "Let's go." And without another word, they began walking. Jamal walked Malik back to the car, his arm lightly draped across his son's shoulders. The sun was still out, casting long shadows over the sidewalk. But something in the day had shifted. What had started as a peaceful afternoon now felt fragile, like glass under pressure. Inside the car, Malik sat quietly in the back seat, seatbelt clicking into place with a soft snap. He didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. He knew his dad was thinking, the way grown-ups do when their eyes go still, but sharp. Jamal placed the candy on a clean paper towel from the glove box, careful not to touch it again. He examined it closer now, holding it up to the light. One of the wrappers had been resealed with clear tape so thin it almost disappeared. The lettering on the foil was off-center, like it had been reprinted by hand. Jamal's jaw tightened. At home, Malik went to his room without a word. He took off his shoes, sat on the edge of his bed, and stared at the floor. A few minutes passed before he heard his mother's voice downstairs, soft, confused, then sharper. "What do you mean someone gave him candy?" Jamal's reply was lower, steady, but urgent. "Something's wrong with it. I can feel it." Later, after dinner sat untouched on the table, Jamal opened a drawer and pulled out a small flashlight. He shone it through the unwrapped edge of one of the candies. The inside wasn't solid. It had been hollowed slightly, just enough to slip something inside. His breath caught, not loud, not dramatic, just a pause, a realization. From the hallway, Malik peeked around the corner. "Did I do the wrong thing?" Jamal looked up quickly. He crossed the room and knelt down. "Number, you did everything right." Malik searched his father's face, looking for the truth behind the words. He saw it. The next morning, Jamal left the house early, candy wrapped tightly in a sealed bag. As he drove, his hand stayed near the dashboard, tapping lightly, thinking, listening to the road. He didn't speak a word, but his eyes were set, clear and focused, and his grip on the wheel never loosened. The test results came back in less than 24 hours. The candy had been tampered with. Inside the hollowed shell was a fine white residue, just enough to raise concern. It wasn't sugar. It wasn't innocent. Lab analysis confirmed it. An over-the-counter sedative in a dose far too strong for a child. Not lethal, but dangerous, especially in small hands. At the precinct, Jamal sat in a plain office, staring at the report. The fluorescent light above him buzzed faintly, steady and cold. He didn't speak for a long while, just let the weight of it settle. The paper crinkled slightly in his grip. Leonard's face floated back to him, the forced smile, the stiff hand, the candy placed down like bait. Jamal had seen this kind of man before. The type who hides behind politeness, who smirks in silence, who thinks the rules don't apply when nobody's looking. Outside the station, the city moved on like normal. People bought coffee, walked dogs, made small talk at stop signs. No one knew what nearly happened beneath the branches of that quiet park. They found Leonard sitting in a dim corner of a local tavern, sipping warm beer through tight lips. He looked smaller there, swallowed by the low light and the quiet hum of conversation around him. When the plainclothes officers approached, he barely turned his head. He didn't ask why. He didn't protest. Just stared forward as the cuffs clicked around his wrists, like he'd already accepted whatever came next. Back at the station, Leonard sat alone in a small room, his hands resting on the steel table. His eyes didn't wander. He didn't twitch or tremble. He looked like a man who'd made a decision long ago and didn't care to explain it. On the other side of town, Malik sat at the kitchen table with a coloring book and a red crayon. He wasn't coloring, though, just flipping pages, one after the other, his mind elsewhere. His mom moved quietly around the room, glancing at him every few minutes. Upstairs, Jamal changed out of his work clothes. His badge sat on the dresser, catching a stripe of evening light through the curtain. He looked down at it, and then at the photo beside it. Malik, age 6, grinning wide at the beach. He didn't smile back. But his eyes stayed on the picture a while longer than usual. Leonard sat in the interrogation room, slouched slightly, eyes fixed on the blank wall across from him. The room was cold and plain, with no clock, no sound, just the hum of the ceiling light overhead. An officer entered and placed a manila folder on the table. He didn't sit. He stood just long enough for Leonard to glance up. "Do you know what we found in the candy?" Leonard didn't answer. He didn't have to. His jaw shifted slightly, a muscle in his cheek tightening. Diphenhydramine. Enough to knock out a grown man, let alone a child. Still no reply. but his shoulders tensed, just barely. The officer leaned in, voice calm but firm. "You didn't just give poisoned candy to a random kid in the park, you gave it to the police chief's son." Leonard blinked. For a second, it didn't register. He shook his head, slow and confused. "Number that kid? That can't be." His voice cracked at the edge, disbelief rising like heat. "That's Malik Parker. 9 years old, smart, quiet, cautious. His dad is Chief Jamal Parker." Leonard leaned back, color draining from his face. "I didn't know." The officer didn't respond. He just closed the folder and walked out, leaving Leonard in silence. Across town, Malik sat on the steps outside his house, drawing shapes in the dust with a stick. His father joined him quietly, sitting beside him without a word. Malik looked up. "Was he trying to hurt me?" Jamal hesitated for only a second. "Yes." Malik looked down again, nodding slowly. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just kept drawing. "You didn't eat the candy. That's what matters." Malik looked at his dad, eyes steady now. "Because you told me not to." Jamal smiled, small, proud, quiet. "You remembered." In that moment, under the soft orange light of the setting sun, the danger of the day faded just enough. Malik wasn't scared anymore. He felt safe. Not just because his dad wore a badge, but because his dad had prepared him for the world beyond the front yard. A week later, they were back at the park. Malik tossed pebbles into the pond, same as before. But this time, his dad sat on the bench beside him, and neither of them,